If you're new to our channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Coming up on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, we're going to take our compost pile, rebuild it right here, and try to turn our cold compost pile into a hot compost pile. We'll move these containers out of the way too. And we're going to talk about the importance of bringing organic matter in and building your soil as we have with our leaves and using cardboard as mulch. All that and more coming up today on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener is sponsored by the following.
It all starts in the soil. Since 1925, Kellogg Garden Organics has been dedicated to providing you and your family organic products that have helped your gardens grow. Our organic soils and fertilizers can now be found at the Home Depot.
MIgardener.com with over 450 varieties of non-GMO, heirloom, organic flowers, vegetables, and herb seeds, all for 99 cents. MIgardener.com. HappyLeafLED.com, a commercial-grade grow light with a home gardener's affordability. All indoors, no fans, no motors, simply plug in and grow. Great for seed starting to lettuce to full-grown tomatoes. HappyLeafLED.com.
Sustain Natural Fertilizer, offering superior organic plant foods that deliver research-proven results. Trusted by farmers, growers, and gardeners for 30 years. Learn more at sustain.com.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. I'm Joy Baird. Well, today we're going to rebuild our compost pile. And compost, as we all know, is a crucial part of soil nutrition, importance to build your soil with the compost. And if you can make it on your own property, you can save a lot of money. Now, we've got a couple of issues with the compost pile that we have constructed here over the last 2-4 years, somewhere in that range. We've got pallets on both sides. We've got baby crib front on the back here, and then the same on the front. And the whole thing is shifted just because we continue to add new yard debris and weeds and leaves and kitchen scraps in there. So what the plan is to do is, I've got more pallets in the garden shed. I'm going to bring them out. We're going to rebuild the compost pile the same way we have this one, with the walls this side and this side, so we can access it. If we put it this way, it's going to be hard to access because we have the garden fence here to keep animals out. So we'll take all these containers, get them out of the way. I'll get a level established platform here. And you really, if you can do this in your area where you can have an open compost pile, it's best to put it on the actual physical ground instead of making a brick plateau for it or concrete slab. And that allows the microbes to interact with the native soil and helps break down the pile even more. So I'm going to get these containers out of the way, and then we will try to start disassembling the old compost pile and reassembling here, and we're going to use some cardboard in order to help us build some of that portion of it. Okay, I've got all the containers moved out of the way. Now at the bottom of the containers we had at one point cardboard laid down as a weed barrier. Worked really well, but I'm going to scrape all of that, what's remaining up there, and that's going to be incorporated into the beginnings of the new compost pile. I'm just going to rake everything in a pile here just so I have a basic start. You can see how that cardboard has really killed those weeds back without having to use any chemical treatment. And right up next to this compost pile, we had a Jerusalem artichoke that we harvested. That was a volunteer. Now that I got that all cleaned up, I'm going to bring the pallets in and start framing our new compost pile. And I'll be able to should be able to pull that post out. Then I have a secondary post that we can use as the side guides for the pallets. All right, so I've got this pallet up against the shed here, and what you want to do is you want to put your most slats towards the pile, and that's going to kind of restrict a lot of the material from falling through that you're adding into it. I've got a post here that I've secured, just adding stability. That may stay, that may not stay, based on how structurally sound I construct this. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to put cardboard between the inside portion of the pallet to act as a wall. Now that will break down, but for right now that will allow more of the material to stay in the actual pile rather than filtering out. And some people will say, well, the cardboard has the toxicity in the glue. That can be the case based on what it was designed for or used for. I'm going to go ahead and use it. I don't think it's going to be that big of a concern, as once it breaks down, it's going to go back in nature. It's going to convert back into soil, organic matter, and it's going to be fine in my thinking. So I'm going to get the cardboard in here, and then we'll get the secondary wall here structured, and then we'll start building our pile. Okay, got the cardboard there done. Now we'll bring this over, get another fence post, and then frame it into the width that I need based on the back here, which I might need to get a different back trellis or a different back frame, because that one's pretty much used up there. Okay, so I've got it built, and you can make it as wide as you want to. I've just made it as wide as the previous one, because that's where we're going to use these flat sides of the baby crib that we used on the first one here. And I got the cardboard on both sides here just to add more wallage to prevent the spill out of the material. And there's still a few little holes here and there, but nothing to what it was. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring all that yard material in here, and then I'm going to start layering the pile. So what I have here is some kitchen scraps, some squash that we didn't get eaten before it went bad. In the bags are coffee grounds, and then you got the brown material. The pile over here, the kitchen scraps and the coffee grounds, are considered green material, and the yard's debris there is considered a brown material. To have a perfect compost pile, you want to layer it 50% of each. One layer, 6 to 8 inches of one, 6 to 8 inches of the other, to get it to heat up properly. And a good compost pile will get to about 160 to 170 degrees core temperature, and some people will turn it, other people will leave it alone, but that's what we're going to attempt to do. I'm going to layer the kitchen scraps first, then I'm going to go over to the other compost pile and bring in some of that debris that still has viable seeds, because it's a cold compost. It does not get core temperature warm enough in order to kill the seeds. And that's what the job here is, what we're trying to accomplish, is to get all of this broke down so the compost that we can use in the garden and in containers do not contain viable seeds. And that's what we want that core temperature to do, just to bake those seeds to where they won't germinate. Now, a question that has come up is, can you throw wood chips in a compost pile, or will that rob the compost pile of nitrogen? And you certainly can throw wood chips, a normal wood chip consistency, in the compost pile. Because the level of nitrogen that's in the pile, there's going to be some depletion, but it's going to break down the wood chips very, very quickly. 5 to 6 months, maybe 8, compared to if you just had it in a pile in the back corner, where it would take literally years to break down, 2 or 3 years. So yes, you can do that. Another thing, if you have small twigs, you can certainly break those up and throw in your pile. And that's going to add the opportunity to aerate the pile more, because there's more gaps and air can get in there and break down the material even quicker. Also, part of the solution to not having weed seeds in your compost is don't put grasses or weeds that are already sprouted in seed heads in your compost pile if you're going to do a cold compost. And that's, again, that's a number of years where the pile doesn't heat up, it just naturally breaks down. So that's one way to avoid this, but it just, you do what you have to do for your particular situation. So we're getting about halfway through the pile right here. I had to switch to a shovel because the fork just was not capturing all the soil that I know still contains viable weed seeds. And I've closed off the other end there just to kind of help hold it in. And we're just going to keep layering it and then get this all cleaned up. And the reason why I really wanted to work on this one was because that cold, hot compost, we weren't getting the heat in this one, as well as I can't walk by the garden anymore. I've got to go the other way. So this is all pushed over. Now, there's nothing wrong with this compost here. We've got a lot of great soil here that has a lot of nutrient value. What you can do is, if you're growing in containers, you can sift this out and fill the bottom of your container with half of this sifted compost if you have a cold compost pile, and then top dress or fill the rest of the container up with potting mix or compost that you know is not got weed seeds in it. And we've done that for a number of years, and we'll continue to do that. And that's a way of stretching your purchases dollars if you need to buy compost or potting mix. That's how you can stretch it in your containers. Bottom half with the soil that still has the weed seeds, and you smother that with the top portion that has no weed seeds in it. So here's the final product. We've moved it about 4 foot to the center of the garden shed here, and I'm able to walk between the pallet and the fence. And we've got this area here cleaned up where we can stage containers and or just leave it empty. The compost pile is extremely full. I topped it off as full as it could be, and then I have sifted some of this fines into a separate storage container until we're ready to use it in our containers, like I talked about, bottom half with the compost that I know has viable seeds in it. So you can do a compost pile. Again, make sure in your municipality that it is okay to have an open compost pile, or you might have to revert to a closed compost tumbler if you're going to go it that way. When transplanting your seeds or up potting them, there's a couple of things you need to know. One is the type of plant, and do you actually need to move it to a larger container. For example, we have Aunt Ruby's green tomatoes, or German tomatoes here. We're going to let these grow just about a week more until they get a little more height on them, and then we're going to transplant them into their final destination until they go to the garden. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it this way, but we found on the front side of seed starting, it saves a lot of space if we put all of the one variety in a cup and allow them to get to a certain height. Then we transplant them over into their own cell. What we've done in the past, what we found doesn't work well for us, is we had 25, 30 different varieties of tomatoes, and we would plant 2 to 3 plants of each variety, and we'd put one seed in each one of these party cups. So we would have many trays of party cups with seedlings in them, which is okay if you have the space. But what we're able to do now is take the best 2 or 3 out of this and then transfer them. If you want to do a party cup, we do them all in root maker cells. These are the 18 cell trays that work very well. And we would bury it as deep as the first set of leaves there, so allows all that stalk, that stem, to put roots on when it's in the tray. And then when it's time to plant, we just pull it out. We want to mark what we have here. But that's one way that we do it. With herbs, on the other hand, based on the type of herb that you're growing, if you're growing thyme or a crop like thyme, you may not want to divide each one of the little plants out. You may want to plant it as a whole cluster and then allow it to essentially produce ground cover. If you're growing basil, like we are here, then you would potentially want to either put one in each styrofoam cup if you have a lot of styrofoam cups, or we use the 60 cell root maker tray for herbs, and we would take each one of these mammoth basils and plant in its own cell, simply to give it more space before it will go out in the garden, because we're still looking at potentially another 5 to 7 weeks before they're actually safe to go out in the garden in our area. For something of this nature, we've got red romaine and we've got butter crunch head lettuce here. These we're not going to touch. We planted these in the 60 cell tray, and this is where they're going to stay until they'll get hardened off, and then they'll go outside. With the butter crunch and the romaine, they're small enough plants that they're not going to compete tremendously with other adjacent plants in the cell, and at the time of planting we will just break them apart and then put them in their own place in the grow bag or in the garden. So when it comes to up potting or transplanting to larger containers, there's a variety of different ways to do it. You just do not want to leave your tomatoes in here for 6, 8, 9, 10 weeks. We do peppers the same way because, number one, the amount of soil in this container is going to dry out very extremely quick because of the amount of moisture these plants are sucking up. And two, they're going to compete so heavily for nutrients that your overall production or health of the plant is going to decrease dramatically. If you're using peat pellets, you want to supplement some type of liquid fertilizer or manure tea, organic or inorganic fertilizer, liquid fertilizer at quarter strength, because those plants are growing in strictly peat moss with no nutrient value. So keep up on that so your plants are healthy whenever you take them out in the garden. We always talk about the importance of adding organic material in your soil in order to build the microbial life, bring the worms in. And that is what we have done to an extreme this past year. In the fall, we pick up the leaves that fall on our property as well as in the street. We go about a half block in both directions and on both sides of the street. We only pick up leaf debris. We don't pick up yard waste. And what we've done, we bring them in the garden here at one trash can full at a time. This is a 44-gallon rubber trash can. And when it's all said and done, I'm still picking leaves up on the property here in the later portions of March. Once we get all done, we will bring in approximately 2,000 pounds of unshredded leaves to this garden, this 1,800 square foot garden. What we've done in part of the garden as an experimental process is, as you see here, we've laid cardboard down and then we put leaves on top of the cardboard itself. Now, this does not work in all situations where you're going to plant direct sow like leaf lettuce or spinach or carrots in that type of plant life. The cardboard doesn't work as a mulch because you're going to have to remove it, work the soil, and then broadcast your seeds. This application, we're experimenting with eggplant, tomatoes, peppers, where we'll spread the leaves out, and then where we're going to plant the particular item, move the leaves back, take and cut a hole where that plant is going to go, and then plant the plant. We'll have our irrigation system under the leaves. We'll work that in when we get ready and it gets warm enough we can hook that up, and then bring the leaves back. And if there's places where we have too many leaves, that's certainly an easy problem to solve. We can move them to a different location. Now, this is a problem I want to have in March, April, May, is I've got too many leaves that I've saved from the previous fall. What you also want to keep in mind is that by the time June, July, August comes, in most situations, you won't notice that I have put a ton of leaves, literally 2,000 pounds of leaves on this garden that will have all broke down and fed the soil. Now, where the cardboard is, some people will say the cardboard has a toxicity glue, and that may be the case, but for what little bit I'm implying to the garden bed and the benefit in which that cardboard will serve me in time saved and weeds suppressed and moisture retained, I feel the return is worth the small amount of toxicity that may be leached into the soil from that cardboard. So if you still are able to get leaves, certainly do that. Bring them into your garden. They're a phenomenal resource in which is free and great for your soil. Thanks for joining me. Join me again next time for more organic gardening and food preserving. I'm Joy Baird, and this has been the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.